there's still unknowns, and there's still, every time you open one, you see little pieces of things that you've never seen before. And I think it's just sort of a lifelong journey to get more and more intimate with the process and understand what's going on in there. The wood process, there's something about the aesthetic that can happen in this kind of a kiln that is unique, and I think that's still evolving in my own head, and I'm still working on that. And one of the characteristics that it has is that when pieces come out of these kilns, they tend to be ageless. It looks like they could be 1,000,000 years old, or 100,000 years old, or 1,000 years old. They have this sense of time that's been that's happened to them through this transformative process, and so that's another thing that I like about it. And so as my own aesthetic evolves, I use the kiln in different ways to try to hone in on certain kinds of characteristics, and that's a part of what keeps me interested in it. Yeah, when I came down, I knew Ben, who works over at the Lawrence Arts Center, Ben Albers. He's the one that invited me, and I knew Marshall just a little bit, but I didn't know what to expect. I hadn't seen this kiln or this setup or this facility, and so I had no idea what I'd be running into. And when I came out and visited a few weeks ago, I was impressed with the setup here, and it seemed like it was an opportunity to connect both the Art Center and the university together. And I think any time that there's that kind of a symbiosis, that it's good for everybody. And then when you have an event like this, you never know who's going to be affected in what kind of way. So when you set up a situation where there's all of these potentials going on, the wood kilns being fired, these experimental kilns, the train kiln, when all of that's happening, there's a lot of energy, and then the individuals that show up, they contribute energy to the process, and it's always interesting to me to see how the process evolves, and how personalities and how you get to know one another through the process, how that evolves. And so the wood kiln alone is one of those, I sort of equate the firing process as sort of like a happening, because you have all these people coming together to make this thing happen, and what it becomes is not entirely prescribed, other than the general idea that you need to get the work hot for it to be successful. But how that happens can happen in many ways, and I think that's one of the reasons that I keep coming back to the process, is because it offers that surprise, I guess. And so far here, it's been, as we've loaded the kiln, everything's went incredibly smooth, and the work that showed up for the firing, I had no idea what kind of work there would be, but it was a fantastic range of work, size, scale, types of work, aesthetics, and so it all kind of fit together to make for a really good loading. Not knowing what was going on here in Lawrence, to show up here and then find that there's people in the community that are participating at the Art Center, and then there's students within the ceramic program here that are all interested in this process. And so I think that seeing the groups come together, that's a real ideal situation. And I think that it's not an easy thing to do, to collaborate. School is sort of its own thing, and community-based things are kind of their own thing, and they don't always, there's not always a natural way to bring these kinds of groups together. And I think whoever conceived of this, I guess Marshall and Ben and I don't know who else conceived of this concept of doing this joint project, it's this tool, these tools, these kilns here are really the ideal way to bring people together, because it's not just, most things are sort of a short-term experience, maybe where you go and see a lecture and a lot of people are at the same lecture, or maybe it's a workshop where you're seeing another artist's work and so these two groups might come together. But this is an actual, this is a process where everybody participates in the process. They take part in it, and it doesn't just happen over a day. It happens over the period of a week or two. And because of that, people are able to, I think, interact with each other in a deeper way and get into things that they wouldn't it's less superficial, and there's more sort of human content involved with it. And because everybody has to work and pitch in, everybody kind of has to pull their own weight, and that adds to the experience a lot. So you see people working, you're here, you're working together, and when that happens, the energy level goes up. And that energy is really where I think a lot of important things happen. Art experiences happen, and human experiences happen when people are in that kind of a forum. And so I think this concept of bringing the groups together for this event is brilliant. I think it's a really good way to do it. And then to have all of these other artists come in that are coming from other places, and everybody has their own sort of skill set and their own sort of ideas, and they contribute this other level of information. So it's from a pedagogical standpoint, it's really a brilliant way to do it. And that's another reason why I love the wood kiln, is because it teaches, just by setting up the problem, you learn what's going on. There's a learning process that's natural, and it's not like the classroom, it's not like lecturing, it's just innate in the process, and that's the most natural way to learn and to teach.